your hosts. I'm Diane Bortoletto.
And I'm Natascha Caro.
Let's do it.
Hello, and welcome to And Away We Go F1 podcast, a Formula One podcast that goes beyond the track limits to talk about travel, food and lifestyle surrounding the sport. I'm Diane Bortoletto, your pre-Drive to Survive Formula One fan, and today I'm in Nambucca Heads on the mid-north coast of New South Wales.
And I'm Natascha Caro, your post-Drive to Survive Formula One fan. And today I'm sitting in my mother's spare bedroom in Bunbury in the southwest of Western Australia. We're both back with our family, Di.
So it's really, really nice to be back. And this week we've got a really special episode, a tribute paying homage to International Women's Day. And I just want to thank our friend and fellow podcaster, Amanda Kendle from the Thoughtful Travel podcast, who initiated this idea. She's putting out an episode where I'm a guest, talking to other female travel podcasters, asking some thoughtful travel questions, I suppose. So we thought, well, this is great, and thought, well, why don't we ask those same women a few Formula One travel questions and do our own special episode.
It was so much fun talking to all these beautiful women, many of whom we know personally, and hearing where they would like to go on the Formula One calendar. A lot of them aren't Formula One fans, but it doesn't mean that they can't enjoy the beautiful destinations that Formula One goes to.
Yeah, and they're all travellers at heart, and most of them travel writers or travel journalists, travel podcasters. It was a really fun chat. I hope you enjoy our chat with them. But before we jump in, this is the question that we asked, and I think I should start by asking you, Mon, this question. So if you could travel to any Formula One destination for a holiday, which would you choose and why?
Why did we ask this question to everyone? It is so hard.
It is hard to pick one, but
I'm going to stick to my guns and say Mexico. I've always said that I wanted to go to the Mexican Grand Prix. So I can hear the mariachi song, or the Formula One theme song played in mariachi. But anyway, taking Formula One out of it, I still think Mexico would be my destination of choice. Because I've never actually been to the South American continent. I've never experienced that sort of culture aside from when I was in, the very south of California, where the Mexican culture kind of bleeds through a lot. I'm going to stick to my guns and say Mexico. Just the color, the vibrancy, the food, the people. I just think it would be one big, beautiful party in the sense that it just always feels so vibrant. So that would be my choice. So what would be your choice, Di? Where would you choose? And I'm going to put a caveat on this. You're not allowed to say Italy. We know that you have, I'm not even going to say a soft spot. You are Italy all the way through, and it is the most wonderful thing. You're Italy obsessed. So let's take Italy out of the equation. Where would you go?
For a holiday, if we're talking non-race week, pure holiday, it's going to have to be Japan. It's on the top of my list at the moment to go to for the culture, which is hugely different to ours. I've never been. And so many people I know, so many Australians are traveling to Japan at the moment. I think the exchange rate is quite favourable for us. It's quite close. It's in the same time zone as Western Australia. So Japan. But I also want to go back to Singapore. I've only been to Singapore once and I didn't eat chili crab. And I can't believe I didn't eat chili crab because I was traveling with my dear old mum who wasn't hungry at the time. And it happened to be our last meal in Singapore. And we just, we're only there for a few days and we did some hawkers markets but we just never got to chili crab. So I've got to go back to Singapore. I'm obsessed. I've got to go back and have chili crab.
Oh my gosh, Di, I can't believe it. You didn't eat chili crab. Mum wasn't hungry.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, so definitely we're going to get Singapore on there and we're going to get Japan on there. Japan's a really good one, actually. And I'm pretty sure Japan has done a really good job at marketing themselves as a travel destination as well. And especially now that it's winter, I think it's popping up on your feeds all over the place because it is snowboard central right now.
Yeah, totally. But also Baku, Azerbaijan, because they hosted Eurovision, right, a few years ago, and I just loved it. It just looked like all the postcard footage they were showing of Azerbaijan. I actually know someone from Azerbaijan who lives in Margaret River, Shout out to Sammy. She's a fantastic cook and just makes me drool on her Instagram. We'll put a link in the show notes to that one. Give her a shout out on International Women's Day. I just think it looks like a fascinating city, and we've both talked about Budapest. I've been to Budapest before, but long time ago. And I just remember the Roman baths there. It was so beautiful. And at that time, it was so cheap. It was like a pint of beer was like 8 pence, English pence, which was like 15 cents Australian. Like it was such good value. So that would be another one.
It's still cheap. It's a really great place to be. And also, if you could go on holiday to Budapest, you're so close to all these other Central European countries that I'm obsessed. I think if there's anywhere else that I'm like dying to go to is
Canada. I mean, I have been to Canada before. I've spent 3 weeks traveling as a backpacker long time ago, but I haven't been to Montreal. I went to Toronto, turned left, headed to Vancouver and through the Rockies. I'd love to go to Montreal. I think that again looks like a fantastic Grand Prix. Oh, there's so many islands in there.
I was just going to say Belgium as well, because Belgium's somewhere that I've not been yet. And I really need to eat Belgian food. It's on my list. That's very broad, isn't it? I just really need to eat Belgian food, but Belgian beer as well.
And chocolate, the mules and frites. Yeah, the mussels.
Exactly. That's what I would be going for.
So with that, let's hear from these fabulous women who are joining us for the International Women's Day podcast. We've got Amanda Kendle from the Thoughtful Travel podcast, Caro Ryan from Rescued. We've got Natascha Mirosch from ExtraVirgin Food and Travel, Kirstie Bedford from The World Awaits, and Carolyn Schonefinger from Holidays to Switzerland Travel podcast. So, Kirstie, could you tell us about a Formula One destination that you would like to go to for a holiday and why?
Okay. So I'm Kirstie Bedford. Nice to meet you, everyone. Thank you for having us on this incredible podcast. I have the podcast called The World Awaits with my friend and colleague, Belle Jackson. And we're all about inspiring travel. So if I was going to go to a destination, look, it's probably a completely obvious one, but, I'm just a complete Italian tragic. And it would have to be Mama because it's in May. So it's before the peak season. So, you're not going to be overrun with tourists. And I haven't done a road trip around Florence since I was far too young. And it's too embarrassing to mention how many years ago it was when I was there. But let's just say a few decades. And so I need to go back and do a road trip. And I think, just haven't been to Tuscany for far too long. So who doesn't want to do that?
So, Natascha, if you could go to any Formula One destination on the calendar, current or former, race week or not, which destination would you choose and why?
Well, hi, Monique and Di. Thank you so much for having me on your wonderful podcast. I'm not a Formula One fan, but I am a fan of the places that it takes place in. And I think in this case, I would choose Baku in Azerbaijan. And the reason is that I have never been there. I know very little about the country or the city itself. I've seen some pictures. It looks pretty amazing, this sort of contrast of very modern and historic. But beyond that, I know very little. I do know that and I hope I'm right about this, that it's neighbour with Georgia. And I'm very keen to visit Georgia as well. So it means that I could just pop across the border and get two for the price of one. So that's my choice. I'm from ExtraVirgin Travel podcast, which I forgot to say. So thank you for that.
So that's Natascha Mirosch from ExtraVirgin Travel podcast, a great travel podcast where she interviews deep dives with one guest on each episode mostly and talks about all sorts of interesting topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Di, for rescuing me in that. Thank you.
Speaking of rescue, what a great segue to Caro Ryan, whose podcast
such a pro.
Is called Rescued. So, Caro, tell us a quick tagline of your podcast, and if you could go to any Formula One destination for a holiday, which would you choose and why?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Di and Monique. I'm absolutely stoked for your new potty. And like the others, I say I'm wouldn't have thought of myself as an F1 fan, but looking at those destinations, I'm wondering if it actually might turn me into a bit of an F1 fan. The Rescue podcast is an outdoor podcast for hikers and adventurers.
And looking at that list on pretty much all of those destinations appeal to me for my love of the outdoors. And like some others, I wanted to say Baku, Azerbaijan, but mostly because 50% of Azerbaijan is actually mountains, which is pretty exciting. And they have a trail going through there, the Trans-Caucasus, I'm not going to say it right, Trans-Caucasus Trail. So you could walk from the Black Sea to the Caspian Sea along that, which would be amazing. But, and here's how I'm going to be sneaky. So I could say that, but what I love about the destinations and what draws me to some places is to, as part of that travel thing, is to walk with women in countries where walking an outdoor adventure for a woman isn't necessarily something front of mind. So some of the UAE countries, some of the things in the Middle East, I would love to spend some time with women, walking with women in their outdoor, their wilderness areas, their mountainous areas. So yeah, I could tick lots of those boxes.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah. What a great answer. I love that.
I love it too. Do you want to come with me?
Absolutely. But you know what? You could show us all you know, and then Di and I could take you to one of the Formula One races and show you everything that we know.
Oh, talk about some adventures there. I don't know who'll be more of the fish out of water. I can do champagne though. Does that help?
And let's go to Amanda, who initiated this podcast to start with by holding a special International Women's Day podcast on her own podcast, which is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. So, Amanda, just give us a very brief one-liner about your podcast. And then if you could tell us which destination you would like to go to on the F1 calendar for a holiday and why.
Thank you so much, Di and Mon. And as others have said, also not an F1 fan, but I love listening to your podcast. So that says a lot, doesn't it? And yeah, the Thoughtful Travel Podcast is a collection of many, many stories about why travel is good for us and how it can be good for others as well. So how we can travel mindfully and thoughtfully. So I initially picked, like many others, Baku, because I have not been to that part of the world yet. The stands and Azerbaijan around there totally fascinates me. I've heard so many good things, absolutely dying to go. So Baku was my number one choice. But then since everyone seems to be picking it, I thought I better also have some backup plans. And then I couldn't pick one. And, it's a problem, So then I thought, well, Montreal, because I have lots of beautiful friends in Canada and I've only ever been to the west coast of Canada. And surely it's time to go and visit some of the rest of my wonderful Canadian friends, right? Travel is often about, spending time with wonderful people. So that became an important pick. And then Suzuka in Japan, because I used to live in Japan and it's actually quite close to where I used to live. And so, of course, I really want to go there as well. And then, I promise, last one. And then Shanghai, because recently, just last year, I stepped foot in China for the first time. So I was in Hong Kong and I spent a night across the border in Shenzhen. And I've long wanted to go to China anyway, but having been just for 24 hours while I was in Hong Kong and sneaking over the border, I didn't sneak over the border, I went legally, but being in China for 24 hours, I really want to come back here. So Shanghai. So I couldn't choose one and I'm sorry.
All great answers and all Formula One races I'd love to go to as well.
There you go.
Yeah. Japan would be ace. I think it would be a whole other world.
I bet. Japanese do things differently and beautifully.
And finally, we move over to Carolyn and tell us a little bit about your podcast, Carolyn, and also let us know which Formula One destination out of any of the Formula One destinations that there are you would love to visit for a holiday.
Thank you, Monique and Di, for having me on your podcast. I have to say, I never thought I would be on a F1 podcast, but I did grow up in a motorsport-loving family. So I watched lots and lots of cars go fast in my days. Now, I have the Holidays to Switzerland podcast. So every week, myself and my guests talk all about Switzerland and some of the beautiful places that you can visit, give our listeners tips and everything they need to know about visiting Switzerland. Now, there's no F1 races in Switzerland, sadly, because I'd be there if there were, but I'm going to choose Budapest, or as I think you might actually correctly pronounce it, Budapest. obviously it's very close to Switzerland. I sadly haven't been there yet, but I've seen some amazing pictures, and my son actually was there a couple of months ago and absolutely loved it. Everyone I've spoken to says you've got to go, so it's definitely on my list. However, I won't be going during a race week, I don't think, because it's the beginning of August, and that's a very, very, very busy time in Europe for tourists. So I think I'll stay clear of actual race week. But Budapest is on my list.
Nice.
Great answer.
Can I recommend Budapest in autumn? It is phenomenal. It is stunning. The crisp days, the blue skies, if you get blue skies, and then obviously all the leaves turning and there's less people there. It is just stunning in autumn. Highly recommend.
Yeah, and there might be no Formula One race in Switzerland, but there is a team in Switzerland.
Yes.
So you're not too far away from F1 country there. Thank you so much, ladies, for your contributions to And Away We Go F1 podcast. We've loved hearing the destinations you'd love to travel to that are on the F1 calendar. And a great thing about sport, isn't it, and major events is that it gives you a reason to go to a place at a particular time. And maybe it's a place that you might not have gone to otherwise, but thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for having us, Dominique, and I cannot wait to hear more from the F1 podcast.
Well, thank you, guys. Thank you. That was fun.
Thank you.
Oh, Mon, wasn't that a fabulous chat?
Oh, I can't tell you how good it was to see all of those faces again and to hear their voices and to hear them talking about Formula One, even if it was just the destinations. We are slowly getting there with getting our friends to like Formula One Day.
They see us so passionate about it, and I think that rubs off a little bit on them as well. But we've also got a couple of recorded messages coming in from some women in Formula One who've answered a different question on if they could holiday with any F1 driver, who would it be, as well as the destination question. So let's jump into that.
Hello. This is Tiggy Vallon from Paddock Project. If I could go for a holiday to any F1 race destination, I would choose Singapore. I am dying to go to the Singapore Grand Prix. It's a night race. It just seems like the most incredible atmosphere, attracts incredible, passionate fans, and I love Singapore. So that would be my choice. If I could go holiday with any F1 driver, I would absolutely choose Lewis Hamilton, no questions asked. He's my absolute favorite driver, and we would have so much to talk about, and we would surf, we would make music, all the things. I love Lewis. And any women in my life who have inspired my F1 journey or passion, so many people in and out of motorsport. I think to start, two of my closest friends, Chessa and Sarah, started this podcast with me about 3 years ago, and just talking to them all the time about the sport and learning what they loved about it and talking about what I loved about it just really inspired the desire, I guess, to talk about it every single day and dedicate much of my free time and life to this sport. So that for sure. And then the incredible women who are working inside of motorsport at all the different teams, at F1 itself, and in and around the ecosystem of the sport have been incredible. So really have been trying to shine a light on some of those women, but off the top of my head, a couple who come to mind are Laura Winter, Jamie Chadwick, so many of the amazing women working at F1 Academy who I've had the privilege of talking to and working with. So many women at the different teams, including McLaren, Mercedes. I've loved talking especially to the women who are working in sustainability and comms and marketing and engineering, the wind tunnel, so many different women. So it's been incredible to watch women thrive in the sport, and I hope it continues for many, many, many years to come.
Hi, Diane and Mon. This is Sarah Holt from the BBC podcast series F1 Back at Base, which is available now on the BBC's F1 Checkered Flag feed. Well, if I could go for a holiday to any F1 destination, the one that is top of my list is Mexico. When you go to the US Grand Prix in Austin, you get a flavour of that with the Day of the Dead celebrations and the Tex-Mex food. But I'd really like to go to Mexico City for the real thing. The stadium section of the circuit looks so amazing. So that's on top of my list. If I could go to a track that's not on the calendar anymore, then I'd go to Watkins Glen in New York State. I just love to go there. Which F1 driver would I like to go on a holiday with? Well, I have 2 small children, so I don't want to go on a holiday with an F1 driver because I don't think that'd be very relaxing and restful. They'd be wanting to go to the gym and do their cardio, so that's not for me. But during our podcast series, Adrian Newey told us that before he took the job at Aston Martin, he went sailing on his yacht to mull things over. So I'm going to choose to go on holiday with Adrian Newey on his yacht and grill him about the 2026 aero rule changes. I'm sure we'd have fun, or at least I would.
Oh, Mon, that was so lovely to hear from Tiggy and Sarah. Thank you so much for contributing to our podcast with your wonderful answers on who you would holiday with and your favourite F1 destinations. But I didn't ask you, Mon, if you could holiday with any Formula One driver, dead or alive, like who would you choose to go on a holiday with and why?
I've got a bit of a wild card here, and I have thought about this, and I have a very specific reason for choosing Yuki Tsunoda. Yeah, apparently he's a really good cook and a really good chef, and I would love to go on holiday with someone who could cook me fabulous meals so I don't have to do it.
Yuki is really into his food.
It'd be pretty interesting too, because I think there would be some really unpredictable moments. I mean, he seems like a really spontaneous, slightly unpredictable guy in a very funny way. So, that could make for some fun times too. So who knows?
Yuki's a firecracker. I think he'd be heaps of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Heaps of fun, and he can cook. So he would be my choice. And if I'm going to reverse the question around on you, Di, who would you choose to go away with on holiday?
Oh, look, it would have to be Daniel Ricciardo, a West Australian. We know he's good for a laugh. We know, he's good for a road trip as well. I think he would just be heaps of fun to go on holiday with. I'd also really like to go on holiday with Lewis Hamilton because I just think he's just such a kind, thoughtful, kind of deep person. And I just love how much he gives back to the sport and how supportive he is on diversity in racing. And
imagine the conversations. They'd be some good dinner conversations, I reckon. Or airplane conversations or whatever you're doing on holiday.
Yeah, exactly. And, I think there's probably is a fun and lighter side to Lewis as well, which I would really like to see. Also Fernando Alonso, because I've always liked him. I just think he's a straight up guy, no nonsense. I also like that he's not 18.
Slightly more age appropriate for both of us, really.
But, let's be real. If I had an opportunity to holiday with any Formula One driver, I would take it.
My second choice, I'm not going to say Daniel Ricciardo because everyone would love to holiday with Daniel Ricciardo, I think.
Yeah,
everyone would find something great there. Obvious choice. Another one of my choices would be Carlos Sainz.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love Carlos. I love him. I think he's funny. He's obviously a very handsome man, but outside of that, I think he's very funny. I also think being Spanish, he'd know how to cook. We could have some great karaoke time. Smooth operator.
He's got a great pancake recipe and he's posted about that in the past. Speaking of Carlos Sainz, actually, did you see that he's appearing in Stanley Tucci's new series called All Birds? It's a dinner party. It's a TV show where essentially different guests come together for a dinner party that I believe Stanley Tucci is cooking, and Carlos Sainz is one of the guests.
Oh my God, love.
Yeah, totally.
Love. Where do we get an invite?
Wouldn't you love a seat at that table?
Oh my gosh, yes. Right next to Carlos, please. So anyway, next.
Well, next, let's talk about F1 Academy. There was a really exciting announcement dropped. Yay. So we've got an Australian driver in the mix.
Ava Agnostiades.
Ava Agnostiades, welcome to F1 Academy. That is so exciting. You'll have the whole of Australia behind you cheering you on.
Absolutely. Do you know what I find most exciting about this is that a couple of episodes ago, we spoke to Lee Hanetchek from Karting Australia, and he was talking about Ava and when we were discussing women in motorsports. And he brought up Ava and said that there would be some exciting news hopefully to come in a couple of weeks. And I tried to get that news out of him and very pointedly asked if she was going to be in Formula Academy, and he didn't give anything away.
You were right. And I've since gone back to him and said, Mon guessed it. We got it right. And he said, yeah, but I couldn't say anything because it wasn't confirmed.
Yay for us being behind her and basically knowing that she was going to be in Formula Academy. That's how much faith we had in this woman. We knew it. We knew she was going to be there.
It's great. It's great news. Great news for all young Australian karters and racers and women in racing in general.
Especially ahead of International Women's Day.
Exactly right. and oh my God, we're full of news today. So 7th of March, just a few days away, Drive to Survive Season 7 drops. And oh my God, I'm champing at the bit.
You saw the
shorts,
the preview, didn't you? Oh my gosh, I wore some of those little snippets in there. Oh, it's going to be so exciting.
Zach Brown, let's see if we can make him crack. Oh, yeah, there's going to be some juice.
Then Horner called him something. It was pretty much the most exciting season in the last maybe 3 or 4 seasons, I think.
Oh, by a mile.
You know, with all the drama, which is exactly what this show is about, with Max not dominating finally. It's just going to be so interesting. I mean, we've got the whole Daniel Ricciardo situation to go with. We've got the whole Checo situation. Obviously, Lewis moving to Ferrari. There is so much in there. It's going to be fabulous.
The Christian Horner scandal at the start of the season. That's huge.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep, there's a lot there. Get your popcorn out, kids, and clear the diary. 7th of March on Netflix.
Yay.
And in some other news, Mon, is Liberty Media's financial reports have come out and they've released some really interesting statistics. So last year, in 2024, the TV audience for Formula One was 1.6 billion people. Whoa. Yeah, massive. And Formula One's social media fan base grew from just 70 million up to 97 million in 1 year.
Holy dooly.
Yeah.
That's just mind-blowing.
Isn't it?
Kudos to the social media team, though, because there's every single reason to follow them or any of the individual teams. They all do such a fabulous job. So no wonder it's grown so much.
Shout out to the Ferrari admins. They're just killing it at the moment. Since Lewis has joined, it seems they've just upped what they're doing. It's so good. And the last stat for you, Mon, is in 2024, 6.5 million people attended Grand Prix races around the world, a record-breaking year for attendance, and that's up 9%.
Wow. I wonder what they're predicting for this year. So it'd be interesting to see if it grows again and again.
They're going to have capacity issues, like some races just like the Australian Grand Prix sold out. Like I think there's only a few very limited, very expensive hospitality options.
And Thursday tickets.
I think there's only a handful left of Thursday tickets. There's not even a lot there. I'm still on the hunt for tickets. So if anyone's listening, if anybody's got any leads for race day Sunday tickets or quali tickets or both, hit me up. And away we go, f1podcast@gmail.com. Yeah.
And is there anybody out there?
Anybody else? I'm not asking for freebies. I'll pay.
It's getting down to crunch time. Getting desperate for those tickets.
It is. So, Monique, last question. Since this is a special International Women's Day episode, tell me about a woman in your life that's influenced you in a way that's been profound in your life, whether it's personal or career or because of Formula One.
I'm going to go down the career path here and mention my absolutely wonderful mentor, Fleur Banger. She put herself out and she was just the biggest wealth of knowledge, and I don't think I would be where I am today in my travel writing career if it wasn't for her and her being so open to share her knowledge. And I think she's just a very gentle encourager. and it worked wonders for me. So yeah, I'm going to give Fleur a shout out.
I've done mentoring with Fleur as well. After I found out you were doing mentoring, so I thought, oh yeah, I want a piece of that. Fleur's amazing. And I would say she is an incredible mentor. Gentle is not the word I would use with her though. She pushed me, maybe because I kept pushing back, but she's, and that's what you want from a mentor, is someone to challenge you and someone to keep, pushing you. And I do believe that she's still doing mentorships. Fleur Banger, let's give her a shout out. So if anyone wants to be a travel writer, needs help with pitching, doesn't know where to start, or you're already a travel writer and you've hit a roadblock or just not getting the traction you want, hit Fleur Banger up.
I'd suggest any kind of writer on that as well, not just a travel writer. If you're into food, if you're into whatever, she's got a wealth of knowledge, having worked in the industry for so many years, and a lot of the skills are transferable. So yeah, that's my answer to that question. Yeah. And for you, who would you say has influenced or inspired you, just again, across any aspect of your life? One special woman.
Besides my mum, who is always encouraging and always of the opinion of, well, if you want to do it, just go do it kind of mentality. And I'm going to say my Auntie Anna. So she was, when I was in my 20s growing up, I probably could have ended up being married a few times in that period. And she was a really good sounding board for me that helped me make good decisions as far as relationships go, or stop me from making bad decisions perhaps. She was always someone that I really looked up to, and she gave me the same, well, very similar advice, I suppose, that what mum and dad would give me, but because it wasn't delivered from mum and dad and delivered from my cool Auntie Anna, then I listened and paid attention. It does hit different, yeah. So I'm going to give a shout out to Auntie Anna.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah.
We love our strong women.
Yeah, we sure do. Amazing. Happy International Women's Day to all the wonderful women out there, and to all the men who are influenced and cared for and nourished and loved and supported by wonderful women. I feel like we shouldn't have International Women's Day. I'm going to be honest. I feel like every day everyone should just be appreciated and respected. But because we know it's not always been a level playing field, so on this day, let's celebrate all the good things about awesome women in the world.
Like us.
And also all the women podcasters, all the women motorsport fans, and all the men that support them too. Yeah.
Fabulous. And a massive thank you to these wonderful women that are involved in Formula One. We have loved hearing from them. And thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed listening to the podcast, you can leave us a review or a rating, preferably both, on your favorite podcast listening app. Just search for And Away We Go, Formula One podcast, as I'm sure you know. And you can also join the conversation on our social media. We're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. Or you can email us at andawaywegof1podcast@gmail.com.
Thank you, Mon, and thank you to all the wonderful women that have contributed to this podcast. And thank you for having us in your ears. It's just an absolute privilege to deliver this podcast to you week in, week out. We love it. I hope you love it too. Until next week and until lights out.
It's lights out and away we go.
And Away We Go podcast is produced by Diane Bortoletto and Monique Ciccato.
Let's do it.